You are an incredibly powerful being. You are an incredibly intuitive being. You are an incredibly magical being. And this is not the first lifetime where you have possessed such qualities and have lived within the perfect confluence of internal and external circumstances to be able to grasp these qualities within you, study them, remember them, utilize them to change the course of your life and the lives around you in a profound and positive direction. With this self-initiation energy, there's a sense of you are your own teacher. You needed to walk a path up to a certain point in time of being guided in very specific directions, like a path of seeking, searching for answers, coming into alignment with certain traditions, certain practices, certain beliefs that served as a foundation or even a ladder upon which you have climbed out of a certain level of struggle or a certain level of questioning in order to come to a place where you could start to build upon that sense of personal empowerment. But then you also were always meant to move beyond certain things, to also encounter certain untruths that for a period of time resonated because you harbored such woundedness or confusion inside of you that these ideas, these communities, these teachings resonated with, spoke to that brokenness or that woundedness inside of you. And so you found shelter, kind of like safety in numbers, within these different practices, traditions, teachings, belief systems. And at a certain point in time, living within that sense of illusion has also been something, in addition to like a path of loss, of struggle, of questioning that you've been thrust upon in this lifetime, that may have been something you've experienced since childhood, or this may be something that, has kind of been just in a very specific chapter of your life as an adult. But all of that was meant to kind of awaken this layer of truth inside of you that now refuses to be contained underneath a veil of illusion, underneath a veil of mistruths, underneath a veil of a limiting perspective. This is a time of self-liberation for you and of self-remembering. And in terms of those intuitive gifts, that inherent power inside of yourself, only you are the one at this point in time that has the answers that you seek. You may be finding yourself moving away from the crowd, moving away from the mainstream, moving away from the things that at one particular point in time had resonated very deeply with you. But then there came a point where your road was diverging from others because you started to look at things at face value and they didn't feel as relevant anymore. Something within you said, this isn't right. This doesn't feel like the right way. Maybe in general, or maybe just for you as a person. And so steps that you are guided to take to either go into hermit mode at this particular point in time, or to set out again along that path of questing and questioning, where the most resounding level of resonance and confirmation that you're experiencing at this time, or that you will start to experience, doesn't necessarily come from like what everybody's saying, what the masses are saying, what the mainstream is saying, but it's something inside of you. It's these past life versions of you kind of whispering in your ear a truth which you have carried with you across time, something that beckons you to a role or an archetype or a version of yourself that you are meant to embody, you are meant to become, you are meant to modernize in a way within this current incarnation. It's part of the reason that you've gone through what you've gone through. It's part of the strength that you've brought in, almost like as a contingency plan, like in case things went wrong, in case things went south. You agreed to this incarnation because you knew that inherent strength that you carried inside of you that has allowed you to rise through the fire in the past. That has been something that you've spent many lifetimes cultivating, fine-tuning, protecting, remembering. And this is almost the energy of like, if everybody else or everything else in the world is opposed to you, it is this fire inside of you that will see you through to a brighter tomorrow. And so at this particular moment in time, this is like your real awakening. It's a quiet awakening. And yet it's loud within that silence, deep inside of yourself, that energy of self-initiation, self-remembering, taking all the tools that you've learned that others have bestowed upon you or, had kind of trained you in or had given you permission to consider yourself kind of experienced with, or, if this has to do with like different spiritual traditions where you're like, okay, I've aligned myself with that. I've gone through a course of study, or, I needed somebody else's approval in order to be fully like aligned with that. This is stepping beyond all of that and trusting the teacher inside of you. Some of you may be called to lead others at this time. And so it's a unique and individual path that you're needing to take away from what has been tried and true, what has been the status quo, what has been established, what everyone else is doing at this point in time. Because there's something inside of you that remembers an inherent truth which has almost kind of been lost to time. And yet you carry fragments of that inside of you to ignite that in the here and now, to bring it out into the here and now, to light your way through the darkness, as well as others' way through the darkness. We have the company of trees. So this speaks to ancestry, lineage. Some of you may be curious about like ancestral traditions, practices from cultures that you are a descendant of, or even certain regions or cultures that are not necessarily part of your biological heritage, but that you've always felt a strong layer of resonance with. That can indicate that in a past lifetime, when you weren't like an ancestral member of your own family tree, when you as a soul were having other experiences within the big sea that is the human population, that you spent substantial amounts of time as a person of a different culture, as a person of a different time period, as a person within this kind of other or varied sort of practice, worldview, lifestyle. And so you've brought that almost kind of energy of otherness in some sort of way into this particular family tree that you come from. That you have also at certain points in time, it feels like, been like your own ancestor in previous lifetimes. So like you've reincarnated again in the here and now, but this is not the first time that you've encountered some of these people in your family currently. This is not the first time that you've been within this sort of heritage, or, even stretching further back beyond sort of like immediate relatives, like that bigger family tree, the places that you come from, the origin points that have kind of trickled down through time to yield you, the people that you're related to, extended relations. There's a call to sort of look in, it feels like at this point, to kind of these more broad sort of themes of practices. There's going to be a lot of answers there for you in terms of like ancient traditions. This is where, you start to look into history. You start to look into, the times and the practices and that kind of like predate modernity. It predates the modern world. Or is it a vastly kind of like earlier checkpoint within sort of the modern age and era? And it is exploring those kind of fringe elements of what might be kind of regular tradition, how things are done, how things are interpreted, how things have played out for better or worse in the here and now within traditions that you're a part of or that you've like gravitated towards. It feels like in those more sort of, in those recesses, That's where you're going to find these kind of sparks, these aha moments, these little keywords, these little practices, these beliefs, these structures, these systems that are going to clue you in some sort of way to something that wasn't just kind of like, a side interest, as it may be at this point in time for you now, or something that you're exploring maybe later in life. Maybe it's something beyond kind of how you were raised, what you grew up in, and you're choosing to explore that now as an adult. This would be something that, way back when, relatively speaking, that would have been normal life. That would have been everyday life. That might have been something you were trained in, something that you became very specialized in, something you were very knowledgeable since you were young. And you spent your whole life devoted to that, practicing that, exploring those beliefs, that was truth at those times. That was like the worldview of those times. That was a big part of daily life within a particular region or culture. And so it has embedded within you as a soul a certain level of mastery, a certain level of awareness that it feels like is a key to unlocking some kind of greater potential for personal empowerment in a way that affects your own personal narrative arc in a very positive way, shifting, moving forward, and is able to help people around you, affect the lives around you very positively, not as a force of destruction, but as a force of positive change, of unity, of healing, of inclusivity, of togetherness. And you are the perfect spokesperson. It's coming through as a spokesmodel. So there may be something in terms of like practices that you have, that you adhere to, or that you're being called to explore and investigate, that you're gravitating toward, and the way in which incorporating that, the study of it, the experience of it, how you bring that into your day-to-day living and apply those things out in the real world, that this may be something that you're somebody that changes the opinion that others have about such things. You break through people's heuristics, their biases, their prejudices, their assumptions about certain things. Because your embodied truth, your living truth, how you carry that forth, it sends a different message. It brings a light of truth into a space of darkness in the form of like non-information, things that have been forgotten, things that have been misinterpreted, things that have been misconstrued or lost. And so there's a sense of encouraging you at this time to listen to that call within, to kind of think outside of the box, explore beyond just what's convenient, explore beyond where there is kind of like a ready community for you, or where there's kind of, like a gathering of a lot of people doing the same thing over and over again. Like this is how this is done. This is the only way. It's the tried and true. It's the only thing that works. It's the only thing that's effective. It's the only thing that's real. There's something for you that kind of like remembers other ways, more expanded ways or more accurate ways, or ways that are more applicable for you as an individual to really capitalize upon that inherent power, that inherent magic inside of you, that light of truth that you've refined through time and you carry with you so close to the surface in this lifetime. And it's almost something that is kind of, it goes beyond sort of the concept of free will. It feels like it's one of the purposes for certain things that you've chosen, like a level of difficulty in terms of this game of life, this present incarnation. There were certain non-negotiable things that needed to happen, experiences that broke you down, brought you to your knees, made you feel very impoverished in your soul, or very collapsed in terms of the life that you were living and your view of the future, that required you to rebuild from scratch, to search within, to make a way forward when no way could be found. And so reaching in, even further, even deeper, even in a more expansive way, spiritually speaking. It feels like that's how you become this incandescence within yourself, to light the way forward for others who may resonate with that path, or who just see you as a being of luminosity, a profound light of personal empowerment, self-actualization, self-discovery, that even if people don't agree with kind of the nature of what that means for you, or don't get close enough to find out what that is, there's something about just kind of how this exploration, this grasping of that power inside of you, how that affects and shifts your energy, and therefore affects and shifts the energy of environments, rooms, encounters, experiences, relationships that you have with other people, places, and things, that is very noticeable. That becomes something people can't turn away from. And in the simple process of even somebody wondering, like, who is that? What is it about that person that has had such an effect? That person leaves an impression. That person is memorable. That person is unique. That person is admirable. That person is amazing. Any variety of those things, it feels like sets wheels turning inside of others to go in that process of self-searching within. Some will have to dig very deep for that power core, that center. It's buried very far inside of themselves. For others, it's very close to the surface, and it requires somebody like you shining that light very brightly to remind others that the switch to flip on their own light, or to acknowledge that it is already been flipped, the light's already on, that is something that doesn't require a whole lot of heavy lifting. It just requires like the power of belief, the power of curiosity, the power of surrender. And so at this point in time, you are called on some kind of a search, something that goes beyond just kind of meditation, listening for like your higher self or your spirit guides or your ancestors, to kind of provide you with those clues and indicators. This is something that is kind of like, taking the time to do that physical research yourself, taking the time to read, taking the time to explore other things, to try out new things, to step beyond kind of the tried and true of traditions that you align with already, to say, what's my own unique signature that I can put on that? How is this a practice that is something that can be individuated to work for me or others like me? What is a way that this belief system can be interpreted in a manner that is relevant for these times in the here and now, or the communities that I care about, or the world in which I find myself living in? And all of that is part of this role of like a teacher, like a living master, like you're on some kind of path of self-mastery. And it feels like when you begin that process of kind of like seeking and searching, a lot of you are going to find some deep fulfillment. It's going to be those answers that you've been looking for, mainly inside of yourself. Like the answer was there the whole time. The power was there the whole time. I just needed to like seize the moment and use it for myself. I just needed to figure that out. I didn't need someone to give me permission. I had to just yield to me. We also have a broom of her own. So a lot of you are called to create some kind of modality, to reinterpret something. The idea of a reimagining. So maybe other traditions, other stories, maybe even things within your own kind of like heritage, your own legacy, the times in which your ancestors came from. Putting yourself in kind of the perspective of what life must have been like for them, and how leaning upon kind of the spiritual sustenance, the spiritual self-empowerment when empowerment in outside circumstances was scarce or was unavailable, that this is something that it feels like the voice that you give to that, the way in which you walk that path for yourself, it's going to be a guiding light for others. For some of you, that is your calling in this lifetime, is to be that way shower for others. But before you can point out the way, you have to walk the way. Before you can guide others along that, you must become the way itself. And so at this point in time, it feels like, if you're getting any kind of like nudges to sort of go into hermit mode, you're feeling like kind of being in your own energy, closing off a bit, that this is not accidental. It's not a negative thing. It's nothing that should be avoided or feared. It's actually a quiet time where, in order to kind of get to that place where you're able to have deeper or more significant or more authentic interactions with other people, there's something inside of yourself that it feels like is already refined, and you just need to capture that. You need to capture those words. You need to capture those ideas. You need to capture those practices. You need to capture the moment and really utilize that as something where, almost looking at the steps forward to kind of beautify your life or your physical experience, it's now an inside job. It's time to reflect on, to map out the garden inside of your soul that has been blooming beyond the awareness of your presence up to this point in time. A sanctuary inside that has been waiting for you to seek entry to it. And nobody needs to give you permission. You are the only one that can grant yourself access into that garden. And with that is almost kind of the process of that, coming home to yourself, learning to come to terms with what you find there, not forcing yourself to love it all, but then loving very profoundly the things that within you that move you to do so. All of that is part of this process of creating a testimony, it feels like, for others that may find themselves in similar circumstances as you and are looking for a way forward. You are that sounding board. You are that instrument that makes this clarity possible for others. You are that teacher. You are that way shower. You are that guide. You are that light worker. And this is something that it feels like when you start to involve yourself in that more regularly, when you really become enthusiastic about that, it's going to create such alignment within you that it's almost like the missing piece. It's like the missing component. It's like you've been waiting for you to come home to yourself. There are past life versions of you that are waiting to kind of reiterate the discoveries that you make, that are waiting to provide you with confirmation of certain potentials, certain ideas, certain theories, certain hypotheses that you then explore. You put those out into practice. You walk that way. And the confirmations are not in kind of like the mainstream teachings of others or what has worked for others, or, kind of the belief that sort of the masses are aligned with. This is a time of something that is very individuated, something that is very unique, something that is very next level. And that next level is not something outside of yourself, it's something within. And it feels like all of this will be a process of kind of stepping out of your own way in order to bring forth that energy of authenticity, that knowledge, that practice, that modality that you create, that book that you write, that tradition that you start, that reinvention of yourself that takes the place of how you've been moving through the world up to this point in time, that is something which is in alignment with the reason for why you've been through so many things in this lifetime. And it is also the prize on the other side of your willingness and determination to continue to press forward despite things that you've been through internally or externally that would have broken a lesser person past the point of repair. And then that would have been it. They would have just carried on within that brokenness, spreading it, perpetuating it, trying to find someone to blame for that, blaming themselves. And instead, you are a type of person that it feels like has the ability to create a beautiful mosaic out of all of that, out of everything that didn't go according to plan, everything that didn't turn out as you wanted it to turn out, coupled with the amazing surprises of the things that have gone beautifully right for you in unanticipated ways. Those little victories that you haven't been able to kind of like share with others. All of that sort of glued together, it feels like. is part of what this process of sort of this internalization at this point, something you're meant to craft, something you are meant to create, something you are meant to hone, something you're meant to understand, something you're meant to refine, to bring that forth in a way that invites others and gives others the ability to kind of articulate what that means to give oneself permission to seek truth within, to use critical thinking, to evaluate and to assess and to search for answers beyond the obvious. And you had to go through that yourself. You're being called to go through that even more profoundly at this point, by yourself and for yourself. And as you step forth beyond this season of introspection, it feels like you will not be alone in that stepping forth. There will be others like you in the collective who have felt that nudge, who have retreated within, and rather than that being kind of like a negative experience, have chosen to turn that into something very positive. So it's almost like an internal process that leads to a lot of innovation. That is a first and very significant step forward into a wave of very profound change for the better that will have a ripple effect. This isn't just like a time of personal triumph or a process where it's like you come to this understanding for yourself. This is something where you almost step into that role as the teacher. You step into that role as the wise one. You step into that role as the knowledge keeper. And in order to bring that full circle, it is making it available for others. It is sharing it with others. It is showcasing yourself as that emblem of discovery. So those are your messages. I hope that they resonated with you and that you enjoyed the reading. Like or comment to claim these energies. Subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more content that I put out here. Don't forget to hit the bell button to get notifications every time I post a new video. And if you would like to book a personal reading with me, I offer those through my Etsy shop, and there's a link for that below. I hope to see you again in another reading. Please take care and be well.